Okay, it's good to be back with you in the boardroom here. Let's get started right away. As I promised at the desk, it's all about you today. It is all about you today. And there you are, right there. You are right there on the board. And we're going to just stay focused squarely on you because there is so much you can do and so much authority you have. And we want to make sure it's crystal clear as to where you are positioned in the overall plan that we're executing together, you and I, and all of us together on the National Leadership Briefing. So let's take a look here at you right here. Now, first of all, it's important to know where we stand as individuals in society, and especially when we have the opportunities to influence public policy and influence the decisions of civil government. Now, you've heard me say this before, that civil government, which is established by processes that are political, has the power to make decisions that are going to impact the lives of our neighbor in either a positive or a negative way. Now, I'm going to say that again because it's important. Civil government, which is established by processes that are political, has the power to make decisions that are going to impact the lives of our neighbor in either a positive or a negative way. And that is another big reason about why we're here. We're here for the other. We're here for our neighbor. We're called to care about our neighbor. We can't just put our ears in our fingers in our ears and pretend it's not happening. We see it all the time. The decisions of civil government having a negative impact on the health and well-being of our neighbor. So if we citizens, you have an opportunity to actually influence those decisions and make the lives of our neighbor better, then we're all over that. And you know what? I'm not talking about dragging you away from where you are onto some other sphere, into some other sphere, or into some other place where you have no anointing or protection or authority. I'm talking about you staying exactly where you are, serving exactly the call that you know you're supposed to be serving, but using the authorities that you already possess and not taking a whole bunch of your time and having a massive amount of influence on these decisions of civil government that will impact the lives of our neighbor, like I say, in either a positive or a negative way. So let's take a look first then and remind you about some of the authorities that you already possess. You do not have to go out and acquire these or hone these. They're not like skills where you have to like work out and get really good at anything. It's you already possess them. First of all, the first authority that you already possess is you have authority as a citizen of the nation of Canada. Now, if you're wondering about what it is that your authorities are, then I am going to be sending you a link to a website that's going to give you, just kind of remind you about all the things that you can do as a citizen of Canada. Everything from getting a passport, serving in the military, voting at election time. I mean, all of these things are available to you. And because we possess this authority already, it's not appropriate for us when it comes time for us to exercise that authority that we actually just let that opportunity slide by, especially when we have such critical decisions being made right now by our governments. If we have an opportunity to put in place government leaders that are going to make better decisions than we possess the authority to help decide who they are, then I think as citizens, we need to stand up and do that. Now, what is the second authority that we already possess? Well, we already possess something called constituent authority. Now, the reason I know that you have constituent authority is because if you're watching this video, there's a really good chance that you live in Canada. And just by virtue of the fact that you live in Canada somewhere, you have a postal code. Actually, and this is kind of the test to know if you have a constituent authority or not. If you have a postal code at the place that you reside, then that means that you live within something called an electoral district. Now, if you take a look at this map here of Canada over here, this map is actually divided up into all of the different electoral districts in Canada. There's 338 of them, and you live somewhere. You definitely live somewhere. And because you live within the boundaries of this electoral district, and we live in a country that has something that is representative government, it's a representative form of government, you have authority as a constituent to speak to your representative about the things that are important to you. Now, of course, here on the National Leadership Briefing, we're all really clear on the things that are important to us: parental authority, respect for our, and defense of our personal freedoms and our right of belief, the protection of the vulnerable, and our desire to not see our kids buried in debt. So those things we can, as constituents, with the authority we already possess, we can actually speak to our local representatives in government. Now, the good thing about the National Leadership Briefing and the fact that you're here is that we can do that all together. So as much as you might think that you don't have a lot of that constituent authority, well, you know what? You're tied in with a whole bunch of people from all across the nation, and together we use our combined influence when we speak to government leaders. So you can walk in there confidently and politely. Remember, we never ever have we never encourage anyone to bang their fist on the table. Just be real polite and just say, you know, this is something I got a concern about, and I'd like to share it with you. I'd just like to see you stand up for my right of belief and freedom of religion. And so that is something you can comfortably do, knowing that we're doing the same thing all across the nation. So that is your role and your authority as a constituent living within an electoral district somewhere here in Canada. So congratulations, you also got that authority. Now, kingdom authority, that is something, and you've heard me say this before if you've been on the briefing before, I don't comment on kingdom authority. Now, I could, if I was standing at a pulpit in a church, I would in a heartbeat. But what I always say is, I challenge the pastors on this one here, is that every person that's sitting in your pews, every person that you encounter, you know, within the faith community that you serve, you know that they possess something called kingdom authority. And you have a key opportunity to teach them about that authority and how they can wield it at election time, and how they can wield it within their community as they tackle the challenges that might exist within your local community. And you have a plan on how to teach that, and you have a plan on how to share that information. So I'm going to leave it to you to continue to do that. But remember, you have kingdom authority as well. Now, the last authority that I have here, it's actually kind of an interesting form of authority there. That PP there stands for political party authority. And what makes that authority so unique is that it's the only authority that's optional. You actually possess all those other authorities, but the last one is optional. You don't have it unless you decide you want it and you want to exercise this authority. Then what you do is you join a political party. Political party authority comes when you make the decision to pull $15 out of your pocket. I think that's kind of the average price of a political party membership. And you say to yourself, look, I want to purchase some extra authority so that I can advance the things that I believe in into society, culture, politics, and government. And if political parties are going to have conversations about the care of our neighbor, I'm going to pull my 15 bucks out, and I'm actually going to be at every table having every conversation I can. Now, there's lots of ways that you can do that without taking a whole bunch of your time, but that's what we teach you on the National Leadership Briefing. Let me give you an example. Right now, there are policy conventions that are being planned in all the political parties on the road ahead. You're going to see policy conventions coming up, and you can speak into that process very easily, but you need to possess a membership in the party that's having the policy convention. So for $15, if they all of a sudden want to have a conversation about expanding the eligibility of euthanasia to include children and the mentally ill, I'm going to spend the money. If they're going to be talking about how we care for our shut-in elderly or our drug-addicted people, folks in our communities, I am definitely going to be there for that. If all it costs me is 15 bucks to have a say, I'm definitely going to be there. Another thing that we get to do when we have political party authority that we purchase optionally is, very key thing is that we get to decide who the candidate is that's going to be in our local riding. So if we have one of these electoral districts here and we've got an election coming up, with which we do, all of the parties right now are looking for candidates to run in the election. Well, if I'm a member of a political party, I can actually vote and say, I like this candidate over this candidate because this candidate shares my views and values, the 4 pillars, and this candidate is willing to advance them into the conversations that take place in the House of Commons. Another candidate might not be as excited about participating in that. So we have an opportunity to choose who best represents our views and values. Now, so those are the authorities that you possess and have the option to purchase more of or additional authority that you can purchase when it comes to political party authority. Now, before I move off of your authorities, you might notice this arrow here pointing up above here, right? I want you just to remind you is that as you wield all of these authorities, that it is for us as members of the faith communities of Canada, as we wield these authorities, we want to make sure that we are aligned with the will of God in our lives. We're members of the faith community. We're Christians, and we have specific beliefs about our Christian faith. And that arrow pointing up is to remind us that my goal is to align myself with the views that the Father has over our lives and in our communities. So that's what we want to do, is we want to position ourselves in alignment with his views, and then as we use our authorities, we will not stray. Now, this arrow is also a good way to remember too the roles and responsibilities of church leadership and pastors. If we have pastors that are on, or leaders on the National Leadership Briefing today, I got to tell you, I'm encouraging you, and I'm just asking you, please, if you ever thought that you did not have a role in assisting people in exercising the authorities that they possess to impact public policy and government in the country, I can tell you that we need you. You cannot, please don't think that you don't play a role, because as we as citizens take our authorities and try and align them with God's view, you're the ones that are going to be helping us to tack in the right direction and make sure that we remain positioned correctly by what you teach us ongoingly. So if all of a sudden they're going to have this conversation, like I say, about euthanasia or abortion or all of these really hot button issues, and we want to be aligned with the Father's heart and views on these issues, then you can help us by teaching on those subjects and on those issues, as to help us to understand God's view on this. So please, this is where you can help us, is to keep us aligned right there. So thanks so much for all you're doing there. And also, again, don't forget, Kingdom Authority. If I've got some authority and you understand that authority and you can teach it to us, please do it. Do it every Sunday if you can, a little bit anyway. Okay, so that's you. And remember, I promised you, we're going to talk about all about you today. So that's where your position in alignment with God, with authorities that you can exercise. And of course, I remind you, we're going to do it together so that you even have more authority than you might think. The second thing that I want to talk about is your personal network. The best way, I just want to remind you about this, the best way that you can increase your influence and advance these principles that we're talking about here on the National Leadership Briefing is for you to understand your place as a center of influence within your personal network. You have people all around you. We talked about it back at the desk, that share your views and values, that have your heart for the vulnerable, that care about the future of our children, that want their right of belief protected, that want parents to have their authority respected by governments. These people are all around you, and you can align yourself with them by reaching out to them and saying, look, these are some of the things that I believe, and I wanted to know if you would be willing to work with me on advancing these ideas. These are important to you, and I believe, you've got your kids play with my kids, your family sits beside my family at church, your church is in the same network as my church. All of these things we share in common. What if we all put our minds to, just kind of looking for opportunities where we could advance the things that we believe in together into these spheres? Well, that's your personal network. And I just want to encourage you is that you can bring them together, rally them around the things that are of interest to you locally, and you can advance the things that are important to you in your local community. So developing that personal network is super important. Now, I'm going to include in today's post-briefing notes something called the Personal Network Survey. We've shared it before, but it's just 4 simple questions that you can ask other people to see if they share your views and values when it comes to these issues that we talk about here on the briefing. And if they do, then you can invite them to join you and to advance these things locally. So that's your personal network. Now, this next part is Very, very exciting, because I told you we're going to talk about this today, is that we have this real big problem. We have this real big problem in Canada right now because we've got all these new people that are mobilized into the sphere of politics and civil government. And they're excited, like I say, about the fact that they have authorities that they can exercise and that they can use to influence the decisions of civil government on the things that are important to us, our neighbors' well-being. So this citizen action group that I'm talking about, that we're going to talk about here right now, is a tool that you can use to help you, and it's kind of structure around you to help you, to train you up to actually hone your skills and actually help your local church to look for these opportunities where you can work together and how you can work together to advance the things that you believe in. Okay, now let me just tell you, the Citizen Action Group was introduced back in 2019 on the National Leadership Briefing, when we did something called a Citizen Spotlight segment on a church here in Canada that had adopted our training here on the National Leadership Briefing and established a citizen action group within their church. And so when I shone that light, that Citizen Spotlight, we called it, on that church back then, they were really just getting their wheels turning. They were really starting to see what was happening. Well, we have in Canada now a church, and actually there are other churches probably, but we're just going to shine a light on this one. But this particular church has really been successful in how they've put their citizen action group together, and it is functioning very well and having great impact, not only on their local church family, but also in their community and in their region. So what I want to do here is I want to introduce you to them today. Join me in watching this video, and let me introduce you to these wonderful people who have built a successful citizen action group that's having great impact in their communities.
I became aware, just in my prayer time, this thing started to come up about what was happening in the nation, primarily what I'd been reading about what was happening in the education system, the curriculum that was being introduced to grade school children and even preschool children. And I thought, I have to do something, but I'm a pastor. I'm not a politician. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an educator. And I thought, well, what can I do? And so I started to try and do a little bit more research. I was sitting there one morning and I said, God, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know how to do all this. I can't keep up with this. And I felt like the impression that came to me was, there's a remnant of people in your church who have a heart to do this kind of thing. You need to find them. And so I just said, okay, I trust that there's people here that will have this on their heart. So I got up that Sunday morning, just a few days later, and I said, we're gonna have a meeting next Sunday night for those of you who have an interest or a heart for social justice issues. Then I got up again the next Sunday and said, tonight we're having a meeting. And it was totally, I had no idea how many people were gonna show up.
But he knew he couldn't do it alone. Just the sheer size of everything that's happening, whether you're looking at the municipal level, provincial level, federal level, there's just so much going on. So he knew he needed help, but he didn't know what that was gonna look like. So he just gave us a call. I felt a tug on my heart.
Our church has 500 people and 20 people came. I said, you guys, I don't have an agenda. What I have is a need.
At the meeting, Pastor Craig just shared what was on his heart in more detail. And he said, more than anything, there's just so much information, so many ways to get to create change and get activated. He just needed a team around him that could help gather that information and process it and get it out to the church.
I need people who can find information for me that's pertinent to us right now. I said, I need people who can vet that information. I need somebody who can create an action plan or a response so that when I get up on Sunday, I can go, here's the information, here's where we found out, and here's what needs to happen, and you guys, here's how we need to respond.
For me, it was easier just to write things out and to try to figure out how we can approach this problem. So I started writing out a rough plan of what it could look like. And essentially what that looked like was breaking up the work that we're trying to do into 3 pieces. So that's a research piece, an action piece, and a communications piece. And so the research piece really focuses on let's get our hands on this information and make sense of it. And then the second piece, to learn about what's going on, but also to see where they can take action. And then the final piece was communications. And this is where we wanted to bring it all together, because we have the information and then we have the actions. So let's get it all in a succinct message that would make sense to everyone, because we know like all of us, we're not experts in this. We're just learning as we go. So let's simplify it and make it something that's easy to digest.
From that, we now have a group, about 6 people, myself included as one of them. I'm not always able to attend the meetings, but we came up with a very simple format. We wanted to meet once a month. We would have a special speaker in. Sometimes it was somebody who was a politician, who shared our worldview and could tell us, here's what's happening. Oftentimes we've had somebody like a lawyer in, or a leader from something like Canada Family Action. We had the leader from Parents for Choice in Education. And what we heard from them consistently, and this is where I learned it, they said, we're so delighted that you're doing something because we've been out there by ourselves. We know there's a silent majority, but they are largely uninformed on the issues. And when you're uninformed, you're unengaged. And when you're unengaged, whoever is engaged pretty much carries the day. So we're not conservative or liberal, we're biblical. Who is running for these various offices that most closely resembles our views and values, that most closely resembles as Christians, as Bible-believing Christians, and those are the people that we want to be able to get behind.
So now we have a Citizen Action Group monthly update. So this is an important piece to keep people engaged and to just let them know what's happening at each level of government. First and foremost, I'm there to serve our pastor. The second part is then serving the congregation and getting the information out. The number one piece that was very helpful was setting up a Citizen Action booth. We have our pamphlets and information about what's going on in politics and government. We try to have someone there every Sunday after each of the services. That way they can come and ask questions. If we sent an email, if they have questions about that, or if anything's happening in government and politics, we can help answer questions and build a relationship with the congregation. Because we even have people just wandering up to the booth and saying, oh, what's this all about? I haven't heard about it.
So it's developed into something that our church is being informed. And because of that, our church has begun to become active. We have 1 or 2 people now that are actually on a local riding council. They're involved. I had somebody in my office this week that said to me, I've been praying about this a lot. I feel like I'm supposed to get more involved and I'm actually supposed to run for office. As pastors, we have the responsibility to help our people be salt.
I knew it was the right thing to do to go and vote and share your voice and be heard, but I didn't actually realize that one person could make a difference. I've shifted a lot.
Salt doesn't have an impact until it makes contact. And as Christians, we have to start making contact with our world, with our constituencies, with the nation.
Youth don't necessarily care about politics right now. They care about who's popular, what the music is, what's on TikTok. They don't care about the prime minister. They don't care about the mayor. It doesn't affect them right now. And so if we can create that in our people and help use the Citizen Action Group to say, hey, there's a value for this, and this is how you do that, then when they become voting age, they'll be educated.
The most rewarding part is when I get to see the people that felt that they didn't have the power to make a change, and we said, no, we live in a democracy, this is a great country, and we have an opportunity to speak out for what we believe in and make it an even better place to live.
And I'm not a politician. I'm a pastor, so I don't try and be a politician because it's not my lane. But there are people in my church who have a real heart for that, and they have a heart for social justice and for one of the things that you've mentioned. And so they're training themselves and becoming, I don't know if you'd call us experts, but at least we're informed and engaged. So it's definitely easier for me because I'm not trying to change who I am. What God was able to do was to create something that empowered our people without me having to change and become something else.
Well, it just doesn't get any more exciting than that. When you see people that have real live experiences and you see them advance through the challenges and arrive at a place where they're really achieving levels of success that I think are surprising some of them even. They say that true success is the progressive realization of a worthwhile dream. And I know these people, they have a pretty big dream and they can see themselves now marching towards success, and they're excited and I'm excited for them. So now what you just saw though, just to summarize and make sure we're clear on it, is that video was the introductory video. It's kind of like the 30,000 foot flyover of the Citizen Action Group that they have established, which will be really the training template moving forward. This is what I'd like you to do. If you are a pastor, and this is something that has resonated with you, and you say, you know what, as a ministry in my church, this is something that perhaps I haven't thought about before, but I'm going to pray into this. You know, is there room in my church for a ministry citizen action group? Is there something that perhaps I've missed, where there's an opportunity where we can have influence locally and better the lives of our neighbors and have influence in our communities in this area? So please pray into it. Now, if you're not a pastor or a church leader, and you saw this today, then I encourage you to bring this video, share this citizen action group segment for sure with your church leadership, and just say, you know, with all respect, I just want to submit this to you for your consideration. Is this a ministry that perhaps we can have in our church, so that as the opportunities come into our lives, as we become aware of the opportunities where we can have influence, we've got this ministry set up to respond and serve not only you as my pastor, but also our church family members and the broader community. Now, let me just finish up here, because I want to just finish with this final point here. The National Leadership Briefing. The role of the National Leadership Briefing in relation to you. The role here is that as you walk your walk, you know that, first off, you're not alone, because the National Leadership Briefing is connected to thousands of people across the nation who share your views and values. And just by virtue of the fact that we're all here with you, that's got to bring some comfort. But we also want you to actually take advantage of more of the opportunity. The National Leadership Briefing here is also here to serve your personal network and your citizen action group, that ministry that you establish in your church, on the road ahead, because it's our role to continue to scan the horizon for those opportunities where you can have influence. Now, we just came out of one of those opportunities where we brought forward the opportunity to select a leader of a major political party here in Canada. So the National Leadership Briefing, what we do is we launch projects which then serve citizen action groups and personal networks. And then you have something that you can see in front of you and say, okay, we were already rallying together locally around the things that we believe in, but we've also got the National Leadership Briefing here to support our efforts. And that is something we are happy to do. So please, every person that you connect with here, it does you a great service if you plug them into the National Leadership Briefing, because we have, brick by brick, we call it, understandings that are built over time as to who we are, what we're working to accomplish together, and what our goals and opportunities are on the road ahead. So that is what I encourage you to do, is always be looking for those registrations, bring people to the National Leadership Briefing, and give us an opportunity to work with you and support you in your local efforts. Okay, so that's all what I wanted to share in the boardroom today. Thank you so much for allowing me to focus on you, because I think you are a pretty exciting subject.